Hello and welcome to the New Order Review, your source for everything anime and manga, that anime and or manga being, as it often is, Hunter x Hunter. Because today we are back with a rather big task, counting down the top 10 antagonists of the series. Tough because Hunter x Hunter is one of those stories absolutely packed with well-built characters, each of whom explore radically different ideas. So that in turn does make them very hard to compare, even if we are just isolating that to antagonists, but of course we are going to do our best anyway. Just as you should do your best to casually wander over to the subscribe button for the New Order Review and press it, thus resulting in regular Hunter x Hunter content uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. Oh, and one more thing I should maybe mention is that it was going to be pretty hard to put something like this together without considering the manga material that has yet to be animated. So to the anime-only watchers, you may see a few new faces, and I guess proceed at your own risk. That is, if you don't want to be spoiled for the eventual 2040 animated series of Hunter x Hunter. Because seriously, it's not coming back anytime soon, so you may as well know what you're missing. But with that, we shall commence with antagonist number 10, Illumi Zoldyck. And starting out with a predominantly calm and collected assassin, Illumi's seemingly lack of any emotion whatsoever very much sets him apart in a world where the power system is driven almost directly by raw need and desire. So amongst all of that, Illumi exists as a beacon of consistency and professionalism, taking no real pleasure from his actions, which is going to be quite a rare feature on this list. However, what does make Illumi all the more terrifying is that underneath all this, and I mean buried very, very deeply, there is an insatiable lust for power, dominance, and control, which really only comes into focus during one brief moment of the series where he is thinking about his desire to control Alika's power. Never before and never again, which makes Illumi something of a great mystery. He is not to be taken lightly in any sense. Anytime he appears, it signals extreme danger to me as a reader or watcher of the series, and while he is a pretty damn fantastic antagonist, I do wish we got to see a bit more of him. Although the manga is currently providing quite a bit of promise in that regard, provided that it ever continues, that is. But as for a much more well-rounded and more explored antagonist, let's head to number 9, who will be Uvogin. A much more classical presence in every sense, Uvogin initially presented himself as quite a stereotypically big, brawling guy thing. Not the smartest, but that's okay because he can do, the punching better than you can. That impression would change quite quickly though, as Uvogin and in fact the entirety of the Phantom Troop were given a level of humanization not typically extended to a group of genocidal maniacs. And as a result, Uvogin is a very conflicting existence. I both love and hate him, which is great because that sort of dichotomy makes him fascinating and attention-grabbing. And although his run in the series was quite brief, he does provide one of the most memorable pieces of action with his fight against Kurapika, as well as kind of leaves this world as the hero of his own story, refusing to acquiesce to Kurapika's demands and choosing death over the idea of selling out his fellow troop members. It's quite sickeningly touching to watch Uvogin's demise, and it always leaves me with this horrible aftertaste for Kurapika, as if he's the one who's kind of the antagonist, which is not true, but that's how it feels. And I think that's the mark of a very, very well done job from Mr. Uvogin. Now, for someone who may not have done such a good job, we have number 8, Gyro. And when I say that, I mean that he hasn't done such a good job yet. However, anytime we mention Gyro, I do need to do the standard explanation, which is that in the anime, an extraordinarily important part was cut out of the Chimera Ant arc, and that was when Gyro was shown alive after having been converted into a Chimera Ant and sinisterly strolling through the very same city that both Gon and Killua were present in. And currently it's believed that Gyro is in Meteor City. However, the reason why he is on this list is because he presents quite possibly the greatest potential threat that this series has ever known. And this is because during his flashback, we saw that Gyro was an individual who had cast aside his humanity long before becoming a Chimera Ant, and his sole goal in life is now simply to disseminate evil throughout the world. And his tenacity for this evil is so strong that it allowed him to easily break free of the Ant Queen's control and retain his human memories. So now with his new body and the potential of Nenus, which as we know responds directly to desire, Gyro is very much the ultimate antagonist, just waiting to rock this world. And the only reason why he's this far down on the list is because we've only seen the briefest of glimpses of that. However, that one glimpse is more than enough to land him at number 8. More manga specific stuff now as we head into number 7 with Beyond Netero, a man who inherited almost 100% of his aesthetics from his father, Isaac Netero, along with what is hinted to be an astonishing level of power and a startling amount of charisma. However, Beyond puts these traits to use in a much more outwardly antagonistic way than his father ever did. And at this very moment, Beyond is almost single-handedly spearheading the plot to travel to the Dark Continent, a location that he has already been to on one occasion, mind you, which speaks pretty tremendously to his capabilities. Something that is quite underrated underrated regarding Beyond though is his mental prowess. He is a man who has managed to outwit each and every one of the Zodiacs within the Hunter Association, as well as entire structures of power such as the Kakin Empire or the V5 nations, and essentially resulting in Beyond having managed to manipulate every primary source of political power in the human realm simply to achieve his own highly mysterious Dark Continent related goals, which, whatever they are not good. This man is the embodiment of sinister, and right now it's really difficult to think of anyone who would be able to stop him. So to turn away from that impending disaster, let's all focus on number 6 being Hisoka. And honestly, compared to every other antagonist we've explored thus far and will continue to explore, Hisoka really doesn't compare in terms of motivation. He's just a morally ambiguous clown magician out there to do nothing but satisfy his own lust for combat. And that makes him so consistently inconsistent. Hisoka is an antagonist who is capable of assuming any role in a story. He can serve as the main antagonist, as he effectively did during the Hunter exam in Heaven's Arena, but he can also be a supporting character like York New City, or even a protagonist himself like on Greed Island. But the important thing here is that we, as an audience, never quite know how this is going to pan out. It's very hard to predict which Hisoka we will be served, and as such, despite the fact that his actions are, less world-shaking than others, his strong history within the series and continued menace absolutely makes him one of the most fearsome antagonists that Hunter x Hunter has to offer. But speaking of fearsome, I think that one antagonist that really embodies that word would be our number 5, Neferpitou. From the moment that Pitou first stepped into the series, Hunter x Hunter was hit with a wave of unstoppable primal force. In fact, I would actually describe Pitou as a Hisoka, just with a goal that is not entirely selfish, which in my eyes makes Pitou far more dangerous. When it comes down to it, Pitou will do anything and everything for the sake of the Ant King, and they'll have a hell of a lot of fun doing it as well, which of course includes wild amounts of sadistic torture, hurrah! But Pitou also comes equipped with other troubling qualities, such as an effectively unlimited quantity of aura and an affinity of specialization, which, putting the two together, means that Pitou is capable of accomplishing anything and everything that they please, very much disturbing the balance of the Nen power system by putting the unlimited aura cheat on. But of course, Pitou also comes with a deep emotional connection as an antagonist due to the whole kite-killing fiasco, an action that would eventually result in our main protagonist Gon being removed from the focus of the series altogether. So really, when you think about it, that's a pretty stunning endorsement of Pitou, an antagonist that really did put an end to our main character. With that said, Hunter x Hunter has a fair bit more to offer, including our number 4, Chrollo Lucifer. So initially, he has the whole stoic, silent, Illumi vibe about him, except that Chrollo is demonstrably more driven. As the leader of the Phantom Troop, Chrollo has command over one of the single most powerful group of individuals on the planet, and he puts them to pretty phenomenal use. Because Chrollo is what I would describe as a utility combatant. On his own, he does not present power in a classical sense, and his danger mainly comes from his ability to analyze and strategize, which is of course very well reflected in his Nen ability Skill Hunter, allowing him to steal the abilities of others, but only after fulfilling a truly ridiculous amount of conditions that only someone of Chrollo level genius would be able to pull off. And as such, with the right amount of planning, I firmly believe that Chrollo could defeat anyone, something that was demonstrated in the manga in his very one-sided fight against Hisoka in Heaven's Arena. However, this also highlights a great weakness, because Chrollo is far less adept at improvised combat. Without a well-formulated strategy, he is quite vulnerable, but then again, only to really top-tier Nen users. With plenty of time for strategy though, Chrollo may as well be invincible. Maybe invincible, depends who he's going up against, that is, because there are other incredibly sharp minds in this series, and one of the most finely tuned would be our number 3, Pariston Hill. And I have never been more terrified by a character that we know next to nothing about than I have with Pariston. Every time he appears on screen or on page, he makes me very nervous, and for good reason as well, because you can never quite dissect Pariston's goals or feelings, even when he has inner monologues, because they generally leave me with more questions than answers, and just an overwhelming takeaway of no one ever should be around this man. He is an unequivocal danger to everyone and everything, and this happy facade will always instill more fear into me than even the creepiest expressions of someone like Pitou, Hisoka, or Illumi. None of them have anything on this terrifyingly happy man. With that said, if I had to choose, I would much rather be around Pariston than our number 2 contender, 4th Prince Saraidnik. Because of all of the monsters that Togashi has conjured, Saraidnik would be the most concerning, as he really does push the desires of humanity far beyond any reasonable limits, and really kind of crosses over into the territory of being demonic. I mean, his hobbies are the kind of things that we would see happening in like a 15th century painting of hell. And that's because Saraidnik has by far the scariest hobby of all, which is art. And humans are merely supplies for said art. And perhaps that wouldn't be so bad on its own, however, in addition to this, Saraidnik just so happens to be quite possibly the greatest natural Nen genius that we've ever casually stumbled across, easily eclipsing the talent of both Gon and Killua, who were both said to have a 1 in 10 million talent. And if that is indeed the metric we're going by, then Saradnik would easily be 1 in a billion. Aura control just comes so naturally to him that before even having mastered the basics of Nen, he had already unconsciously summoned his own Nen beast, as well as developed a separate Hatsu that allows him to see briefly into the future. Oh, and he is of course a specialist, which always makes things much worse. If left unchecked for a few more days, let alone weeks aboard the Black Whale 1, I have no doubt that Saradnik will become one of the greatest Nen users in the world, which will signal the beginning of a very dark age for those within his wide-reaching radius. But still, it is very difficult to crown him as the ultimate antagonist, given that we do have number 1, the Ant King Meruem, the literal antagonist, if you will. Although to be fair, I also could have made that joke with both Pito and Gyro, but I saved it for the king, because I really cannot do this character any degree of justice in a short explanation like this. But for a creature who began life as an overpowered Cell ripoff, he developed into one of the most compelling presences in this and indeed any other series. Meruem is an antagonist so well written that it generally makes me question whether we were on the right side during the Chimera Ant arc, and whether or not the world would actually be a better place, perhaps even as close as we could come to a utopia with him in charge. He was simultaneously fear-inducing and yet incredibly empathetic, to the point where it was tragic to see him depart existence, because he had learnt so much more and come so much further in 40 days than the entire human race had in their long history. And so, to me, Meruem will always be the greatest antagonist and quite possibly, arguably, even the greatest protagonist of Hunter x Hunter. But what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Hunter x Hunter content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for regular Hunter x Hunter glory delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.